Okay, so you're thinking about a career in ecology, huh? Want to become a guardian of the natural world? That's awesome. We're going to dig into what it really takes to make a difference in this field. And you've given us some great resources to work with, especially this deep dive from RoleCatcher. It's not just your average job description. This guide gets into the nitty-gritty of what it means to be an ecologist.
It really does.
Yep.
One of the things that really struck me right off the bat was the emphasis on understanding the why behind things.
The why.
Yeah, like it's not enough to just be able to rattle off the names of every plant and animal out there.
Right.
You have to grasp the connections, the intricate web of relationships within an ecosystem, and how even small human actions can have these ripple effects.
It's like you're an ecological detective,
Yeah.
piecing together the clues, figuring out how everything is interconnected.
Totally.
And the guide definitely doesn't shy away from the fact that this line of work requires some serious brain power. We're talking data analysis, a deep understanding of scientific principles, and even mastering technologies like GIS and remote sensing. It's a lot more high-tech than people might realize.
Really is. And that's where those aha moments come in. The guide really emphasizes critical thinking and problem solving. It's not enough to just follow a set of instructions. Ecologists need to be able to analyze a challenge from all sides, especially when you're dealing with those really complex ethical dilemmas. Like, how do you balance conservation efforts with the needs of people who depend on that environment?
It's a great point. It's not something I'd really considered before, actually, that you're having to make those judgment calls, balancing those competing needs.
It's tough.
It's not just about working with nature, it's about working with people, too.
Yeah,
Finding solutions that work for everyone, or at least trying to.
exactly. And the guide digs even deeper into that idea of collaboration. It points out that ecologists are hardly ever working in isolation.
Right.
They're often part of a bigger team. You're collaborating with engineers, policymakers, local communities, all these different stakeholders.
So you're not just out there in the wilderness by yourself.
No, not at all.
You need to be able to explain your findings and explain them clearly to a pretty wide range of people.
It's true. And that's where this really surprised me. The guide really emphasizes how important communication skills are for this job.
Communication skills.
Oh, yeah, because you need to be able to explain these complex scientific concepts, but in a way that resonates with everyone, not just your fellow scientists, but policymakers, maybe even the general public. You've got to make it understandable.
It's about making that science accessible so it can actually lead to change, right? So it's not just about loving nature, it's about being able to explain it to others.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the broader aspects of being an ecologist, but within this field, there are so many different paths you can take.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing, actually.
Yeah. The guide goes into some of the specializations. You could focus on freshwater ecosystems, dive into the world of marine life, or maybe you're all about terrestrial environments. It's incredible to think you could be studying coral reefs one day
Wow.
and then tracking endangered species in the rainforest the next.
Talk about a dream job for someone who loves the outdoors.
Right. And it seems like technology is becoming more and more important in all of this.
Oh, absolutely.
The guide talks about things like DNA analysis and remote sensing and how these tools are changing the way ecologists work.
They really are.
Yeah.
For example, with remote sensing, ecologists can actually monitor deforestation patterns across these huge areas just using satellite imagery.
Wow.
It's mind-blowing how technology allows you to see and analyze these changes in the environment on a scale that just wasn't possible before.
It's like having a bird's eye view of the entire planet's health, which must be really powerful.
Oh, it is.
Especially for making informed decisions about conservation efforts.
Absolutely. And the guide really emphasizes just how impactful this work can be. Ecologists are on the front lines of protecting biodiversity, figuring out how to deal with the climate change. It's a career with a real sense of purpose.
Which has got to be incredibly rewarding knowing you're contributing to a healthier planet. But let's be real, the guide doesn't just paint a rosy picture, does it? What does it say about the job market for ecologists?
Well, it actually paints a fairly positive picture, which is encouraging to see.
Okay.
It says that the demand for ecologists is only going to grow in the coming years, especially with environmental issues becoming more and more important around the world.
Okay, that's good to hear. That's reassuring for anyone considering a career in this field, for sure. But it's not always going to be easy, right? There are definitely challenges.
Oh, of course. There are always challenges. And the guide acknowledges that. One thing it mentions is that starting salaries, especially in certain areas, can be on the lower end.
Right.
And the job market, especially for those really sought-after research positions, can be really competitive.
It's a competitive field for sure.
It is. So it takes more than just a passion for the environment. You need a good amount of determination and resilience to really make it.
Yeah, it's not just a job. It's got to be something you're really dedicated to.
Exactly. And while those travel opportunities we talked about are amazing, the guide also highlights how physically demanding fieldwork can be.
Sure.
We're talking long hours, sometimes in challenging conditions, extreme weather, rough terrain.
Right. It's not all pretty views and like Instagram-worthy moments.
Your frames.
I'm sure there are those too, of course. But it sounds like you need to be adaptable, resilient, and really genuinely love being outdoors to really thrive in this kind of role.
Absolutely. But if you're someone who thrives on adventure, if you're passionate about understanding how our planet works, and you want to make a real difference, those challenges can often be far outweighed by the rewards.
It's about building those relationships that can really amplify the impact of your work.
Definitely. And that actually reminds me, we were talking about how the RoleCatcher guide really emphasizes networking, and it surprised me at first, but it makes sense when you think about it.
How so?
Having that support system, both within your specific field and outside of it, can make a huge difference,
Right.
especially in ecology, where collaboration is so important. Like we were saying earlier, those connections can open doors to new research projects, collaborations, even job opportunities.
You're right. It's not just what you know, it's who you know as well.
Exactly.
So we've talked about the importance of networking, but what about the actual day-to-day work of an ecologist? What kinds of tasks and responsibilities can someone in this field expect?
Well, the guide emphasizes that there's really no typical day for an ecologist,
Oh, interesting.
which is part of what makes it so exciting.
Okay.
You could be up to your knees in mud one day identifying plant species in a wetland.
Wow.
And the next, you might be in a lab analyzing water samples or using GIS to map out habitats.
So you need to be comfortable both out in the field and also working with technology and data.
Exactly. Ecologists wear a lot of different hats.
Mhm.
They conduct field surveys, collect and analyze data, and then use that information to try to understand how these complex ecosystems work.
It's like piecing together a giant puzzle,
It really is.
looking for those patterns and connections.
Yeah, and once they've analyzed their findings, they need to communicate them effectively.
Right, because groundbreaking research doesn't do much good if it's just sitting on a shelf somewhere.
Exactly. And that's another area where those communication skills are so important. Ecologists need to be able to explain their research in a way that's engaging and easy for different audiences to understand, whether they're presenting at a conference, writing a report for a government agency, or even just talking to the public about environmental issues.
It's about making science relevant and understandable for everyone, not just other scientists.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're kind of like translators in a way,
That's a good way to put it.
taking these complex ideas and turning them into something that everyone can connect with.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, it's about getting people excited about science and the natural world. And that's how we drive positive change.
I love that. Now, one thing that stood out to me in the guide was how much it emphasized understanding the human impact on ecosystems.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge part of ecology these days.
Yeah, it's not just about pristine wilderness areas anymore, is it?
Not at all. Ecologists are increasingly working in areas that are directly affected by human activities.
Right, like urban areas or places where there's been deforestation or pollution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All of those factors come into play. So it's not just about understanding how nature works on its own. It's about understanding how human actions are impacting these natural systems.
It's a much more integrated approach than people might realize.
It really is. And it's about recognizing that we are a part of the environment.
Yeah.
We're not separate from it.
Right.
And that means finding ways to meet our needs while also protecting the health of the planet, which is a challenge.
It's a balancing act for sure.
It is. And that's why the guide's focus on collaboration is so important. Ecologists need to be able to work effectively with policymakers, urban planners, community leaders.
It's about finding that common ground, that shared understanding.
Yes, exactly. It's about working together to create a more sustainable future for everyone.
And that's something we can all get behind. It really is about coming together to find those solutions. Now, we've talked a lot about the work itself, but let's talk about the people who do it. The RoleCatcher guide goes into both the rewards and the challenges of being an ecologist, right?
Yeah, it does.
So let's start with the good stuff.
Yeah.
What are some of the perks of being an ecologist, besides, helping to save the planet?
Well, the guide really highlights how diverse the work is.
Diverse.
In what way? Like in terms of what you might actually be doing on any given day. One day you could be trekking through the rainforest collecting data on endangered species, and the next you could be in a lab analyzing those findings.
Wow, that's quite a range.
It is. And for people who love to travel, there's the opportunity to work in some really incredible places.
I can imagine, like, studying penguins in Antarctica or something.
Exactly. It's not your typical office job.
Not at all. But even beyond the adventure aspect, there's something really fulfilling about knowing that your work is making a tangible difference, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a huge motivator for a lot of people who are drawn to this field. You know, ecologists are right there on the front lines of trying to address some of the biggest challenges facing our planet.
Like climate change, biodiversity loss.
Exactly.
Oh.
So that sense of purpose, of knowing that you're contributing to something bigger than yourself, that's a big part of it.
It's about leaving the world a better place than you found it.
Exactly.
But of course, the guide also acknowledges that it's not all glamorous expeditions and groundbreaking discoveries, right? There are definitely challenges that come with this career path.
Oh, for sure. It's not always easy. And the guide doesn't shy away from that. One thing it mentions is the job market.
Oh, right. Because it's a competitive field.
It can be, yeah. And starting salaries, especially in certain areas, can be pretty low.
So you need to be prepared to hustle a little bit, especially when you're first starting out.
Yeah, you have to be really passionate about it and willing to put in the work.
Because it's not just a job, it's got to be something you really believe in.
Exactly. And even though there are those amazing travel opportunities we talked about, the guide also points out that field work can be physically demanding.
Yeah, it's not all like beautiful scenery and fresh air.
Just sometimes it is. But you also have to be prepared for long hours, challenging conditions, extreme weather.
Right, it's not for everyone.
It's not.
Yeah.
But for people who thrive in that kind of environment, who are passionate about understanding the natural world, and who are driven to make a real difference, it can be an incredibly rewarding career.
Well said. So for those listening who are thinking, okay, this sounds amazing, I'm interested, where do I even start? What does the guide recommend?
One of the biggest things it emphasizes is getting involved in research as early as possible.
Research. Okay.
Yeah, whether that's volunteering in a lab, assisting with field work, or even just taking on your own small research projects. Those hands-on experiences are really invaluable.
It's about getting your hands dirty, literally.
Exactly. And it also stresses the importance of networking and mentorship.
Makes sense.
Yeah, go to conferences, join professional organizations, reach out to ecologists whose work you admire, because those connections can really make a difference.
It's like building your own personal board of advisors, people who can offer guidance and support as you're navigating this field.
Exactly.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the world of ecology.
It has.
We've covered so much ground, from the really big picture stuff like the interconnectedness of all living things to the very practical aspects of what it takes to build a career in this field.
And it's clear that ecology is more important now than ever before.
Absolutely. With climate change, biodiversity loss, and all of the other challenges facing our planet, we need passionate, dedicated people working to find solutions.
We do.
Yeah.
And this guide really highlights the vital role that ecologists play in protecting our planet.
It does. And it's a career path that offers a lot of personal and professional rewards.
Definitely. It's challenging, but it's also incredibly fulfilling.
Well said. So, to wrap things up, if you're passionate about the environment, if you're curious about the natural world, and if you're looking for a career that's both challenging and rewarding, ecology might just be the perfect fit for you.
I think so, too.
And with that, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of ecology. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.